Expressing your love can look many different ways, and with the right jewelry gift from Blue Nile, it can truly sparkle. Blue Nile's collection of classic diamond jewelry makes for the kind of gift that speaks volumes without saying a single word. Or switch things up with a sapphire piece sure to spark conversation. Either way, Blue Nile's Diamond Guarantee ensures you get the highest quality at the best price. Express yourself with Blue Nile, the original online jeweler, at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
Welcome into the most accurate, complete 7-round 49ers 2024 NFL mock draft. Welcome into the show. My name is Sterling Bennett, and you heard that right. This is going to be the most accurate 49ers 7-round mock draft. And honestly, no need for introductions. Let's dive into this NFL mock draft 3.0 complete, 7 rounds, San Francisco 49ers. And let's dive into pick number 1. We are in the Pro Football Network mock draft simulator simply because it's free, it's easy, and in my opinion, it might just be the best one. Also want to ask you kindly to don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the show. Facebook, YouTube. You can find us on Instagram and X. Instagram is 49ers.access. The X is 49ers_access. You can also use our promo code 49ersaccess at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off. So as we await to get to pick number 31, let's talk about what San Francisco and what we have done the past 2 mock drafts with the 49ers. So as we know, mock drafts can be kind of crazy, right? Usually they're highly inaccurate, but sometimes they're fairly correct. The last 2 mock drafts at pick 31, we've taken Jordan Morgan from Arizona, the tackle, and then we traded up in our last mock draft for Georgia tackle Amarius Mims. And weirdly enough, while both those prospects are on the opposite ends of the tackle prospect spectrum, I've still seen people butthurt or angry over the fact that you took Jordan Morgan and you took Amarius Mims. So what's the in-between? What do we think Kyle Shanahan will do at pick 31? We're not making any trades. We're not going to do anything crazy or nuts. Let's look over the first round so far to kind of get a feel as to what we can do. At this moment, there's not many high-end tackles on the board. Let's see what happened inside the top 10. Shano went to the Titans. Joe Alt went to the Chargers. Both those make a lot of sense. Moving down in the mock draft, the Seahawks took J.C. Latham. The Bengals took Amarius Mims. And the Dolphins took Troy Fautanu from the Washington Huskies. And Talise Fuaga from Oregon State went to the Green Bay Packers. While Tyler Guyton went 30 right in front of us, leaving us in kind of an awkward situation because if you are the Niners, you clearly need to improve the offensive line, hence why we've done that twice in our first 2 mock drafts. You have to improve your offensive line. So who do we have here on the offensive line to take potentially? Well, you're not going to take Christian Haynes. You're not going to draft Cooper Beebe from Kansas State here. So let's go to tackle. You have old reliable Jordan Morgan still on the board. Kingsley Suamataia is still there from BYU. Those are the tackles. Or you can go on the interior where Graham Barton from Duke is still on the board. And the great thing about Graham Barton is he can play guard. Eventually, if you'd want to in a year or 2 time, once Jake Brendel is maybe gone, released, maybe even retired, he can then become your starting center, and take over that role. But let's go to Old Faithful, not Jordan Morgan. Let's go to edge rusher. Because San Francisco, for whatever reason, has their eyes on Marshawn Kneeland. Now, for a first-round pick, I have no idea if that's the case for them, but according to Sportskeeda, I'm forgetting his name, but they said that San Francisco, because they went and signed Yetur Gross-Matos and signed Leonard Floyd, that they're out on Marshawn Kneeland, that he's off their board completely. The idea that San Francisco bought 2 stopgap edge rushers for 2 years, maybe 1 year if all things go poorly. They're not going to draft an edge rusher at pick 31 is a wild thing to say because San Francisco has had starters at edge rusher before and still made that a priority for them. I don't think because they've signed Floyd or Dietrich Gross-Matos that all of a sudden Marshawn Kneeland, who again they are apparently enamored with, is off their board. So let's talk about him now before we get into some defenders and whatnot. I just think the Niners, of all teams, like, they, for whatever reason, they could need a right tackle. They could need a right guard. What are they going to do more than anybody else? They're going to go for the right tackle, or for the edge rusher. It's just who they are in their nature. Trenches out. It's the mindset. In this case, you like them to prioritize right tackle, but it just feels like that edge rusher might be where they go at pick 31. So Marshawn Kneeland, at this moment, according to Dane Brugler from The Athletic, first or second round pick on Pro Football Network's big board. He's listed at 74. So to them, it would be a stretch, but he's 6'3", 268 pounds, has insane get off. He's someone that can counter almost every single offensive line's move. He has a great motor, wins within reps, not just early, but also late. And he's got the bend you want they've been looking for since D Ford kind of fell apart physically. Other, you can dare say, prospects or people you can look at is Darius Robinson from Missouri. He's there. I am someone who thinks he'll be probably a late second or late first round pick, early second round pick. So 31's a good spot for him. He's 6'5", 286 pounds, has a good get off. He's really quick. He has, which most, weirdly enough, most edge rushers coming out of college don't have refined pass rushing moves. Darius Robinson has refined pass rushing moves. For his size, again, 6'5", 286, he's not hyper athletic. He has kind of this tweener type where he's kind of this bigger bodied edge rusher. His combine results weren't great, but I think the player that he is far better than what his testing results were. The issue with Darius Robinson is you're buying into traits over production. And sometimes that really works for a player. You can get to college and you can see, wow, we are going to project what this guy can be over what he actually has been the past couple years. I think Darius Robinson fits in that mold. There is a player on the board, surprisingly, still at number 31, and it's a cornerback, though. It's kind of the opposite of what San Francisco likes to do. I think Jair Brown is the highest defensive back the Niners have drafted under Kyle Shanahan, along with Ambry Thomas. That third round seems to kind of be their sweet spot for a defensive back. But Kool-Aid McKinstry is on board at 28. Alabama cornerback, 5'11", 200 pounds, 32-inch arms. If you're into pro comps, the one I've read the most about is Jalen Johnson from the Bears, which, if you know San Francisco, they tried to get him this past season during the trade deadline. So getting a younger player that could become that one day, I think would just wildly, it would honestly blow my mind that if you can't get your right tackle, you can't get maybe the edge rusher you like. If Kool-Aid McKinstry's on the board, there's a definitive conversation happening of should we go and get a cornerback this early, quote unquote early, in the draft at pick 31. He has really good ball skills. He is phenomenal at jamming receivers on the line of scrimmage. He's got average speed, unfortunately, but the way he uses his arms and his hands are just incredible. He's someone that he has kind of like this, he has the softest touch. Usually when you define a player as Charmin soft, it's a negative thing. In regards to Kool-Aid McKinstry, the way he uses his hands are Charmin soft, because he can almost guide and direct corners without getting flagged. He's not coming over there and mauling God with his arms and hands. He's not smacking. He's kind of lightly guiding them to where he wants them to go off their route, which again, kills plays, destroys plays for the offense. He's not the most experienced cornerback in zone coverage, but I do think a player like that would benefit from playing in San Francisco's defensive line. He's someone that, if you're looking for what the Niners defense, like the traits they look for, is physical, good tackler, likes to play the run, someone who doesn't get rattled under pressure. Like, if I put Kool-Aid McKinstry opposite, I don't know, you insert Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, he's not going to get shook. He might get beat, but the moment's going to be too big for him. At pick 31, as Cooper DeJean goes to the Lions at pick 29, unfortunately, Rene Rodriguez. You asked about Cooper DeJean. Let's say he's there at 31. Let's talk about him for a second. He's 6 foot, 203 pounds. Excellent tackler. Excellent run defender. Good speed, lateral agility. He is much better in zone coverage than man, but he still is good in man coverage. He can play cornerback. He can play safety. He can be big nickelback if you want him to be. All that to say, I highly doubt Cooper DeJean either at pick 31. If San Francisco market for safety and they can't find someone to, I guess, in a way replace Talanoa Hufanga, Cooper DeJean could be that player. But of all the people on the board currently that are there, I think two options. Kool-Aid McKinstry is there as a cornerback. All the defensive tackles you may like are kind of off the board, or it's too early to take them. Or you can go Graham Barton. So what do you prioritize here? Do you want a cornerback, a top flight one, that can lock down the opposing team's number 1, number 2 receiver next to Mooney Ward for at least one more year? Don't forget, I think Ambry Thomas, Lenore, Mooney Ward, Samuel Mack, I think all of those players are off the books in 1 year's time. So if you're thinking ahead of, well, we can let Mooney Ward walk, re-sign Lenore, and we have Kool-Aid McKinstry, again, that's a next year conversation to be had, but when you're drafting in the first round, you have to think about, we can have this guy for 4 to 5 years, and if you're going to lose a player like Mooney Ward next free agency, is it worth taking McKinstry now and improving the offensive line, whether it's tackle or interior, later on in the draft? Again, this is a really tough decision because let's say this is the conversation at hand. Graham Barton, definitive starting guard, day one. You're not going to have to play John Feliciano once Aaron Banks is gone in 1 year's time. If he is indeed gone, Barton slides over. If Brendel's gone in 1 year's time, he can play center. And Barton can do it all on the interior for you and play wherever you need him to. Whereas McKinstry, you get him in now, you almost save yourself from having to whether sign a bigger contracts, knowing you have Brock Purdy coming up, Ayuk hasn't been paid yet, or you just go for it completely for one more year and say, wow, we'll figure out the offensive line in rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and let's get our lockdown cornerback. This just goes back to the mantra of, if you were Kyle Shanahan, what do you like? Trenches or the exterior? I will say this. While Graham Barton, to me, is the best interior offensive lineman in this draft, I do think you can find starting caliber, at least in a year or two's time, interior guards and centers later on. Whereas McKinstry, I don't think you're finding a starting caliber outside cornerback in the second round, in the third round. I think either one of these guys, you're getting bona fide studs. McKinstry's a blue chipper. Barton's a blue chipper. This is tough, though, because trenches out, or you didn't go outside, then trenches in. I think at this point in the draft, and I hate to say this, I do think the Niners would go offensive line over Kool-Aid McKinstry, despite how tempting it is. But I think San Francisco values what Barton would bring over the value McKinstry would add to the team. So let's go Graham Barton at pick 31. Either one of those players is a steal. Honestly, San Francisco, whether it's Barton or McKinstry, is improving a position of need. And you can argue which one is more of a need. I think there's a pretty clear answer there, and it is the offensive line. But as we sit here and wait for pick number 63 to come up, we made no trades so far, and we're just waiting and waiting and waiting. Like, there's still a handful of players on this board, including cornerbacks, that you can get in round 2 or 3 that aren't going to be outside guys, but I do think could impact your defense immediately. A lot of picks that I like are going in second round, but let's see if the guy I want stays. Perfect. I think he's still there on the board for us. A lot of good players went in the second round, obviously, but let's see if the defensive tackle is there on the board for us. That sounds dumb, but Michael Hall Jr.'s waiting right there. Yes, 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 and yes. Michael Hall Jr. is still on the board for us. We'll dive into him, but Dumpster Fire Dan has a question. Is Darius Robinson gone? At pick 31, he wasn't gone. But while I do think he'll be the late first round, early second round player, I do think that, like, looking at the board now, Marshawn Nealand is still there. I don't think he'll be there, but we can go Marshawn Nealand, who we already talked about, who San Francisco likes a lot, or you can go Michael Hall, who I think at this point, like, Chris Jenkins hasn't gone yet, right? Defensive tackle from Michigan. Braden Fisk, who we picked the past 2 drafts in this exact spot, hasn't gone yet either. But I looked into Michael Hall this past weekend, and oh my goodness, did I love what I saw. Michael Hall from Ohio State, defensive tackle. He's 6'2", 299 pounds. And now that is a small defensive tackle. But let me explain to you why the size shouldn't be so scary. Shouldn't ward you off from him, because he played at around 275 at Ohio State. So since declaring for the draft, he's put on nearly 20 pounds to get ready to bulk up for the NFL. And I'm going to assume coming into the draft, he will be over 300 pounds at 6'2". He's lightning quick off the line. Not the best run defender, but he does have the instincts to improve in that field. So in a way, you are talking about, you are talking about a player that you're kind of projecting to be something else than what he actually is currently. But his get-off is exceptional. He has finesse. He has power. Can win in both those facets of the game. I do have questions in regards to how Ohio State used him, because there were just times that they just, like, he wasn't getting the reps you'd like out of a player that is 6'2", 299. I know there are, what he tested as at the combine and what he is now. Like, he's been eating like mass gainer since he left college. So I know the size might scare you and say, I'm never drafting a defensive tackle who is 6'2", 299. But the reality of it is, there's plenty of players. One just got paid by Baltimore, who is similar to this size, who right now, I guarantee you, if San Francisco had the pick of the litter, they'd want that player next to Hargrave, who I think his name is Matabuke from the Ravens. Like, 6'2", around 300 pounds. Like, I'm not saying Hall is Matabuke, but what I'm saying is you're projecting that that's what he can be at the NFL level, and he's there on the board. It's super, super nice. You can go back to cornerbacks. Cooley McKinstry's obviously gone. There really is, like, Kalen Carson's good. Talked about him in last week's mock draft, too. He's an outside cornerback, but the injuries he's had has kind of made him fall and further down the draft board. He's 6 foot 190. Really good outside cornerback, has good size, excuse me. He's unafraid to get overly physical if necessary. I think he will get flagged, kind of like Mooney Ward has been. But you already improved the offensive line in Graham Barton. So do you want to go defensive tackle? Do you want to go edge rusher? I think for the sake of looking at what San Francisco likes the most, you already go offensive line. I think had we gone edge rusher earlier, you can go and get a player like Roger Rosengarten, who San Francisco apparently has been eyeing at Washington. So you couldn't get Troy Fontenot, get the opposite tackle from the Huskies. Let's talk about Rosengarten for a second, because I have seen a lot of people talking about him I think it was John Lynch and Chris Forrester, the offensive line coach, were in Washington having this private workout with him on the field with him. So he obviously is someone they're eyeing. They like him a lot. They want to at least get a closer look at what he brings to the table. And I think he's worth looking at here at pick number 63. It's always tough because at pick 63, you have to ask yourself who's not going to be there at pick 94. And if you like a player enough at 63, or you like two players at 63, you leave yourself kind of vulnerable if we're going to miss out on, especially if it's a position of need like cornerback or defensive tackle or edge rusher, you're likely not going to get the guy you want. The Roger Rosengarten, good technique. He can pass protect on the outside shoulder despite a shorter arm length. I do have a lot of questions about his run defense, unfortunately, but he's 6'5", 308 pounds, 33.5-inch arm, so that's like 2/8 of an inch longer than Jordan Morgan's arm length. Joe Staley, obviously Niner legend, apparently has been training Rosengarten, so there are some ties there with the organization. He had the fastest 40 time at 4.92. Excellent footwork in the short area. Highly effective in the zone blocking scheme, so I'm sure Kyle Shanahan's like, get me that guy in the building. He does need to improve his anchor and his core strength. There just really isn't much play strength there when I think of going up against Myles Garrett's, going up against the top echelon edge rushers in the NFL. I think a bull rush could destroy him, which brings you back to Mike McGlinchey a couple years ago. His pad level is sometimes inconsistent, but I do think Kyle Shanahan, when watching him as a run defender, in the running game, I think his ability to climb to the second level would make Kyle Shanahan say, yes, 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 and yes. One thing I want to add to that in regards to Rosengarten is that he was playing left tackle for 2 years at Washington. And when they got Michael Penix, they moved him to right tackle because he was the better pass protector of him and Fatano, and they wanted him to block Penix's blind side. If that doesn't tell you what Rosengarten could be in the NFL, right? He may lack some run blocking skills or may need to improve his anchor or his core, but Washington said, no, we need you to play right tackle for us because Fatanu's got left tackle locked down. You have to play right tackle to block Penix's backside, or blind side, which I guess is also his backside. But San Francisco likes him a lot. I think round 2 is too rich for Rosengarten, which makes me dive back into the defensive side of things. I think cornerback is too rich. Mike Samer is still there. Andrew Phillips is still there. I think cornerback is the sweet spot for the 3rd round for the Niners. But if I'm San Francisco, I'm seeing 2 guys I like a lot and 1 guy that I like a lot, being myself, Michael Hall and Marshawn Kneeland. The question is, you're not going to go 2 offensive linemen back-to-back. That's just not what San Francisco has done in the past. Doesn't mean they couldn't do it, but when you're picking in round 1, 2, and 3, you usually want to spread the wealth. Chris Jenkins is there. You can sell me on Chris Jenkins all day long. I do want to keep this somewhat realistic, though, and Graham Barton falling isn't realistic, but he was there. I'm not going to pass him up. But the fact that Chris Jenkins is there, I'm not going to take him for the sake of realism. But I do think Michael Hall and Marshawn Kneeland make a ton of sense. The question is, do you want a defensive tackle? Do you want an edge rusher? And if I'm the Niners, you may need a defensive tackle more right now than edge rusher because Bosa, Gross Matos, Floyd, Beal, Jackson, you have those guys in the building. I just think, like, Mekhi Wingo is still here. He'll be a 3rd and 4th round pick. Jalen Cromartie, he'll probably be a 7th round pick. He's still on the board, obviously. Like, there are some guys I do think you can get later in the draft, but Michael Hall is so enticing. So enticing. He's on the freaking thumbnail for a reason, right? But I do think San Francisco would go Marshawn Kneeland here, edge rusher. out of Western Michigan. And I think it just fits what they want to do, what they like to do. And now you have an interior offensive lineman in Graham Barton. You've gotten your edge rusher in Marshawn Nealand. We've let one of my favorite players, Michael Hall Jr., slip past us. Now we're going to cry, but we pick soon again. So you've gotten your right guard, your left guard, center of the future. You've gotten your edge rusher that can hopefully apply the pressure across from Nick Bosa, which I do think Nealand does bring some athleticism to a position that currently has... They're durable, but there isn't much like... Leonard Floyd's really good. I like Leonard Floyd. I don't think he brings much in regards to an athletic standpoint for the Niners, as Rosengarten goes to pick 86 to the Jets. What are we going to do? Our tackle prospect is gone. We'll see what happens at pick 94 in a handful of seconds. Michael Hall goes at pick number 88 to the Packers. Braden Fisk is now gone. We're watching our players fall right out of our hands, but we're not going to do any trades here. Let's look at the top of the board. Do you want to go receiver? Round 3. San Francisco's kind of bitten by this round in the past. 2 running backs. You've had Trey Sermon. You've had Tyrion Davis-Price, Danny Gray in recent years at receiver. I think now was the sweet spot for either receiver. Maybe you go tight end here. Cade Stover is here. But I just think of the tight ends, like San Francisco, I think they have a top 30 visit. If it isn't top 30, they've already looked at Eric All from Iowa. He's going to go in the 150s and 170s. Like, he's going to be a late round draft pick. But let's look at receivers for a second, because there are some staggering, unrealistic pieces still on the board for San Francisco. Ricky Pearsall is still here. If Ricky Pearsall is at pick 94, if he's there on the board at pick 94, somebody messed up somewhere, because Ricky Pearsall is a second-round pick. Should be a second-round pick. Arguably the best route runner in the entire draft. Really good at deceiving cornerbacks and defenders. Great speed. Some of the best hands in this entire class. Like over the middle, in the slot, that's his game. A smaller receiver that you're probably not going to want to put outside. He will struggle with more physical and imposing cornerbacks. So I know San Francisco has Ayuk, who will be re-signed. Debo is still there. John Jennings is still there. I think they don't need the big imposing guy, but what they like to do in being hyper physical in the passing game, Pearsall fits that to a degree, but isn't like the perfect receiver for the offense. So maybe you don't go Pearsall and you let guys fall down the board. Like, there's still Jamari Thrash, Brendan Rice, Javon Baker still there. Luke McCaffrey still there. Like, there is reasons to believe you can find the next receiver that you fall in love with in a few years, in the next few rounds. There isn't many tackles I love left so far, and if we're going to take them, they're 4th round, 5th round picks. You can sell me on Bo Limmer here. May not make it to 134, but let's look at the cornerbacks, because there's some pretty good ones still on the board. I'm sure some of you can see Devondre Sweat is still here at 93. Devondre Sweat, defensive tackle from Texas. You talk about the ultimate wild card of could be the next, top defensive tackle in football, where we just gushed about Michael Hall. Devondre Sweat could be that kind of player, if not, way better than Hall. The issue is Devondre Sweat from Texas, who's a great player on film, where if you watch his film, you watch his tape, you read scouting reports, he just stands out above the rest of his class for a reason. Like, there's Byron Murphy, there's Johnny Newton, then there's Devondre Sweat. He just, after telling NFL teams, I was a partier, that's behind me, I've matured, he then gets busted for a DUI for smoking pot. Now, you could think what you want of pot and weed, whatever, that's fine. It's illegal. You can't do that, and you're going to get busted, and it's going to make teams like I would not be surprised if he falls to the third round, early fourth round, simply because of the character issues, or, which is likely, he'll be a Dallas Cowboy or a Las Vegas Raider in the second round. That makes the most sense to me. It's hard to pass on Tavondre Sweat, but the character issues horrify me. Where if I was a team like the Niners, it would be off the board, get out of here, don't even think about it. Ricky Pearsall, again, is on the board there. I don't think he'll be there come draft day. So again, if he was there, I would take him. But for the sake of realism, I'm not going to. I want to make that very clear. If Ricky Pearsall is there, take him. I just don't think he'll be there. So let's go to cornerback here. I think there are two clear answers at pick 93. You can go, and I've already talked about these two guys and gush about them over and over and over again. Mike Sainristil from Michigan, nickelback. If you want to have Lenore play the outside, again, San Francisco does not have a second nickelback. I know they signed Rock Ya-Sin. He plays outside. And let's be honest here, Rock Ya-Sin is not good.
Expressing your love can look many different ways. And with the right jewelry gift from Blue Nile, it can truly sparkle. Blue Nile's collection of classic diamond jewelry makes for the kind of gift that speaks volumes without saying a single word. Or switch things up with a sapphire piece sure to spark conversation. Either way, Blue Nile's Diamond Guarantee ensures you get the highest quality at the best price. Express yourself with Blue Nile, the original online jeweler, at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
Everyone was talking about, Rock Ya-Sin will be this team's third cornerback, fourth cornerback. He'll be lucky to make the team. And I hope he does. If he does, that means he played better than what his past has shown. There's a reason the Colts didn't re-sign him. There's a reason the Raiders didn't re-sign him. There's a reason the Ravens didn't play him. Like, Rock Ya-Sin is not a guy you go, he could be a player. Yeah, I mean, could he be? Sure. Everything has to go right. He has to defeat every single odd in his way to make this team. Whereas drafting a cornerback to play the inside is a much bigger need. Mike Sainristil, Andrew Phillips. There is a player that I also love. Kyrie Jackson is still there on the board. But let's talk about Mike Sainristil for a second. 5'9", 182 pounds. Slot cornerback, can be a day one starter, I believe. He can push Lenore to the outside and give you instant outside flexibility. Once you push Lenore out there, then you have both nickel backs on the field, and you can even take him off the field on base downs, right? He's frisky. He's explosive. When I talk to you about short yardage, explosiveness, 1.54 10-yard split, 40-inch vertical, a 4.01 shuttle time, incredible speed, quickness inside the short yardage. He's instinctive. He loves to tackle. If you point to a cornerback that is willing to just annihilate a receiver, a running back on a screenplay, it's Mike Sainristil. He is someone you probably wouldn't want shadowing Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. Like, he's not a great route mirror. He's not going to shadow somebody. It's just not going to happen. At least now, it's not going to happen. But I do think he has, despite being 5'9", under 185, he has the willingness to go after a tight end, a larger receiver. He's unafraid of contact, unafraid of physicality. So Sainristil makes a lot of sense. Andrew Phillips, also 5'10", 191, so a little bigger than Sainristil. Hyper physical, just this overtly like, if I'm not, like, if he's not touching you, he's not guarding you. Like, he is so physical, he's going to have his hands all over you. He's hard to beat vertically. Unlike Sainristil, he can mirror routes extremely well. Good processor, can play nickel back. One thing about him that I like is he doesn't play grass. He plays receivers. When you talk about being a shadow or a route mirrorer, he is someone that can do that. Unlike Sainristil, who I would say don't guard Cooper Kupp, don't shadow Cooper Kupp. Phillips can do that, or at least you'd give him a chance to over Sainristil. Now, the big knock on him is despite being 191 and being physical, he's not dense at all. I'm 6'2", 218 pounds. I ain't a fast guy. I'm a big guy, right? And I'm, big guy compared to the NFL. I could push him to the ground. He's light as a feather. Like, him in run defense could be a disaster. Now, I'm not saying that he couldn't be a shutdown cornerback, that he couldn't lock down nickel for you. Yeah, he definitely could. And there is a conversation to be had of, well, I don't have to tackle them if they never catch the ball. The issue is, they're going to catch the ball sometimes on you, and you have to tackle. Andrew Phillips, for as much as I like him, I don't think I could trust him in run defense and being a great tackler. And for a team last year that's not going to have, or this year, not going to have Dre Greenlaw, and last year struggled to tackle. As much as I love his coverage skills, I would not draft Phillips, or if I did, I would certainly be a little more hesitant on rundowns. I would not play him in base downs, and maybe that's a chance for Isaac Yiadom and Ambry Thomas, maybe your Rock Ya-Sin to then come back on the field and play outside for you, and Phillips doesn't play on base downs where he's likely to see a run play. So all that said, I think the pick is pretty simple. Gonna go defense here, back-to-back defensive players, and we're gonna take Mike Sainristil from Michigan. Let me see if I have DJ James from Auburn. So right now on the board, you can see on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, DJ James from Auburn is still on the board, ahead of Mike Sainristil on PFN's big board. He's 5'11", 170, extremely quick, sticky in coverage. But you get him out of position, he will yank and pull and get flagged all day long. He's an outside cornerback, not an inside guy. You have plenty of outside cornerbacks. I'm not saying don't add one, but Mike Sainristil, I think, just fits the San Francisco mantra of defense more than a James and a Phillips would. So pick 94, Mike Sainristil. Now we've reached rounds 1, 2, and 3. Things do, I don't want to say get interesting, but you now find yourself drafting in a place where anything goes. And to me, this is the best thing ever, because rounds 1 and 2, you take the best player available. There were a handful of players, Pearsall, that probably ain't going to be there come round 3 that we didn't take for a reason because we want to stay realistic. But in round 4, 5, and 6, it's just you get the best player on the board, and that to me gets really exciting because you can find some real talent at like receiver and tight end and tackle in this draft. And even at edge rusher, like we have gushed about Javon Solomon, Javon Baker, and even Mo Kamara, two of those guys being edge rushers. Like, you know how much I love myself some Mo Kamara. He is, to me, like, I would not be surprised if he's climbed up teams, their big draft boards, 10, 15 spots. That's how impressive he is. I love Mo Kamara, but let's look at receiver here because you've gone defense twice. I think it would be important to then add your receiver on the board. Now, you pick at 132, you pick at 135. I don't want to do trades, but I see Javon Baker and I see Luke McCaffrey on the board. Let's move to tight ends, though, because tight ends are kind of this sweet spot here where you have a player like Theo Johnson and Jared Wiley and Jaheim Bell. Now, I have completely taken Jaheim Bell from Florida State off. He's gone. Erased. Never going to talk about him that much, but because you're here and you're kindly watching and listening, let's dive into Jaheim Bell for a split second, because I am someone who, when you watch him, when you read about him, just gives me nightmares, because he's 6'2", 240 pounds. That is tiny for a tight end in the NFL. He can't be the inline tight end. He's an average blocker. He's not the receiver that his size would, like, if I told you 6'2", 240 isn't the blocker, you'd say, well, he must be a good receiver. No. No. He can't play at the line. He's a good athlete, but he doesn't, like, he would have to be a special teamer to make any roster. Like last year, San Francisco took 2 tight ends. Cam Latu got hurt, never played. For a good reason. Now he got hurt, but even in training camp, nightmare. Couldn't catch a thing, was inconsistent. Braden Willis, you're blocking tight end of the future. That's the hope he can be. But he's young. Okay, so you have to find in the 4th round an impactful tight end to be behind George Kittle. That's not Jaheim Bell. Now, Eric All is still there. Again, probably a 6th, 7th, maybe a free agent pickup for the Niners. But let's go to Jared Wiley from TCU, because Jared Wiley, to me, is someone that I like him, but in the 4th round, when I sit back and I say, what can you add to a team? Like Theo Johnson, for example, like freak athlete. Like he's in the 90th percentile of all testing for tight ends this year. He's incredible in regards to his physical and athletic makeup, right? But even with that, for athletic as he is, as enticing as that might be, only 34 catches and 7 touchdowns in college. That's not a lot of reps as a receiver, but he at least gives you something to fall in love with, which is his athletic traits. He's an average blocker. I think as a run blocker, he's made plenty of improvements, but Jaheim Bell is too small. Jared Wiley doesn't have that one thing like Theo Johnson might, that you say, wow, I can see a team taking you at 124 and being like, we're blown away. You make a lot of sense. Your athletic makeup screams big slot receiver, line you out wide, and have us 2 dynamic receiving threats if Theo Johnson reaches that potential. Wiley's kind of this, just a guy, in my opinion. Then there's Eric All from Iowa. He's 6'4", 252, good receiver. He has soft hands, likes to work over the middle of the field. He's an average blocker, but there is some room to grow in his game. He's someone that is willing to take on multiple defenders on one play. Doesn't that kind of scream Iowa tight end? Doesn't that kind of scream George Kittle a little bit? He does struggle to separate, but I do wonder if, because he had a torn ACL last season and he had a back injury in 2022, I do wonder if back-to-back season-ending serious injuries are what halted him last year. And if you give him a year or 2 to get kind of up to speed, could he then find himself in the NFL? He's played 10 games the past 2 years. That can really scare you, hence why he's a 5th, 6th, 7th round pick in my opinion. And on Dame Brugler's board, he's like the 18th best tight end for a reason. All that to say, I think at pick 124, you have to go receiver. You've gone 3 rounds, you've gotten yourself an edge rusher, a cornerback, a guard, you've gotten the guys you want, and I have gotten this question the past 2 mock drafts. Where is Luke McCaffrey? You have to pick one of the legacy players. Now, Brendan Rice is gone, thus leaving Frank Gore Jr., who I think will go undrafted, then Luke McCaffrey. I like Luke McCaffrey a lot. He's 6'2", almost 200 pounds. He had 17 contested catches this year. That is incredible for Luke McCaffrey. Against man coverage, good luck. Good freaking luck. He is someone that almost has Velcro or glue. Like when I think of a player, I think of the young man in Little Giants when he puts a stick on his hands and is like, whoa, like that's what Luke McCaffrey is. Like he catches everything in his vicinity. He has a 60.7 contested catch rate. Again, 17 contested catches. You want someone to go up and get it? There he is. The one thing about Luke McCaffrey, And it might be one of the more enticing things about him is he's still learning to play receiver. Like, he was a quarterback at Nebraska for 3 years, then transferred over to Rice to be a receiver. Like, you have to ask yourself, okay, if he's that good in college, that big in college, and is having success, amongst the mud of a defense in college, going up and getting balls, what is he going to be like in the NFL? I think there is a team that would say, well, if he's that good in college and he's only played that position for a year, what could he be in 2 years in my system, in 3 years in my system? Once he kind of gets his feet wet in, the NFL, I think it's really enticing. Javon Baker is on the board still. We love Javon Baker here on the show. He is someone that, while I would love over any receiver, I would love to have Jalen Polk out of Washington. Javon Baker, 4th-round pick. This is a spot for him. He's 6 foot, 208, one of the best deep ball catchers in the entire draft. He just makes defensive backs' lives hell. Or makes defensive backs' jobs hell. There we go. He has 30 catches of 15-plus yards. This is a guy that you talk about home run hitter. That's Javon Baker. There have been some conversations of him being like Joshua Palmer, Romeo Dobbs. He's just a guy you point to and say, he ain't the biggest guy, 6'1", 208, but high-level speed, great deep ball catcher, 9 contested catches. You want someone to go up and get it? You can get a bigger guy like McCaffrey, or you can get Javon Baker. I think here, the easiest, simple pick is Javon Baker if you wanted to go there, but for the sake of my sanity, I see Bo Limmer on the board at pick 138. And we will try to get Javon Baker, but I do not want to let Bo Limmer slip through my hands because he is excellent. He can be a center of the future. Now, there is a conversation to be had of, you already got Graham Barton, why do you need Bo Limmer? Well, Feliciano's done in 1 year. Burford probably not back in a year. Aaron Banks might be gone. You may need a Bo Limmer as well. And I'm someone that sits back and I go, okay, you can get Bo Limmer to be a center in the future. You can have Barton next to him. There also is Zach Zinter from Michigan. He's a guard. He's played 33 straight games. Now, within that same breath, he is recovering from a broken tibia and fibula, so that's a big question mark for Zach Zinter, but he has a good anchor. Upper body is extremely strong, hyper athletic. The agility's there. He can go to the second level easily. He does struggle in the short areas of quickness, but one scary thing is he's not quick getting off the line. So he can be beat in pass protection a lot. All that to say, Javon Baker, Bo Limmer, who's not going to be there next? I'm going to go Bo Limmer for the sake of my sanity because we need to find the future center of this team. Nick Zakelj ain't it. Jake Brendel, he can get hurt in a year's time, might be gone. Why not go out there and get him? The tackles you want are still on the board, probably going to get picked later. I'm going to go Bo Limmer at pick 124, and we're going to draft the Arkansas center, get the center of the future, and build that interior for Brock Purdy in the next year or two. I think it's a great pick. It fits a need, but also it's probably one of the better players on the board, if I'm being honest with you. I think when you see where the centers are at pick 132 or 124, and you see Javon Baker there, or Bo Limmer there, you say, yes, need him, get him. You're running up to the draft podium and saying, Bo Limmer, Arkansas. Now, great time. You go get Javon Baker. Made this pick the last 2 mock drafts. Now you have a receiver. You have your burner. You have 2 interior offensive linemen. And you have 2 defensive players. And now you kind of have a luxury here. You pick at 176. You pick at 176, which is a long ways away, but you have 135. And sure, you can go and look at the safeties. Like, what else do you need? But again, like I stated earlier, you have a luxury of picking the best player available. And I think if I'm the Niners, Mekhi Wingo from LSU is there. And you didn't get Michael Hall. You don't get Devondre Sweat. And you're like, oh man, like we really need to get an interior defensive lineman on this team. I think Mekhi Wingo, for as nuts as it might sound, could start in 2 years' time. Now, there's a big if in that sentence because Mekhi Wingo, he's 6 foot, super small, 285 pounds. He's tiny, tinier than Michael Hall was at 6'2", right? I think Mekhi Wingo in 2-3 years' time, he's almost 300 pounds. When you talk about the ultimate, has instant leverage, is just a bowling ball, and can be an amazing pass rusher for you, I think in year one, he can be a role player for you on third downs, be a pass rusher. He had an 8% pressure rate last year for LSU. He's explosive. He's fluid. He has an insane first step where, as a smaller player, you're not going to go against the bigger guards. Like, you have to rely on your quickness to get past these hulking centers and guards. Wingo has that. I just think his size will hurt him. And again, it comes down to, and I think in 2-3 years' time, he could be a starter in the NFL, but it comes down to, does he develop more pass rushing moves? Or if you don't want to say he's a starter, he can be an integral piece in your rotation going forward, where in a few years' time, when Collins is gone, Elliott's gone, while some of those guys are run defenders, Elliott, Givens, players like that, I think Mekhi Wingo could be an instant third down, it's 3rd and 15, go get the quarterback. That could be Mekhi Wingo. Now, I think for him in the Niners system, put him on a NASCAR package on the inside next to Collins, 6 foot, insanely fast defensive tackle, who, again, is really small, mind you, but can just go get the quarterback, and you're like, holy crap. Like, he is back there in a flash. That's an option. You've already gotten your edge rusher in Marshawn Nealand. You can add more. You can go and get Javon Solomon and maybe a Cedric Johnson or a Xavier Thomas. I wouldn't even doubt that. Or you can go and get yourself a tight end. You've already gone your guard and center of the future. I also think this could be a time where the Niners say, running back, 4th round. We've gotten our quote-unquote positions of need. Now let's pick our favorite running back off the board. Apparently, they have a second, third round grade on Isaac Guerendo from Louisville. I don't know how I feel about a mid-round running back. Again, we've taken Dejon Edwards from Georgia the past 2 mock drafts. I still like that pick a lot, but I could see the Niners here at pick 135 going, man, like, I don't know if our guy is going to be on the board at pick 176. And Kyle's like, I wanted Joe Williams. I wanted Trey Sermon. I wanted TDP. I must have Isaac Guerendo. And that's really frustrating, but I could see Kyle doing that kind of thing. Or you can get nuts and go pick Luke McCaffrey or Taj Washington. Now, I do think Taj Washington could make a lot of sense in regards to kick returning. I don't want to take Luke McCaffrey because I don't buy into the idea of, at least here, once you've already gotten Baker, of, well, he's Christian's brother, you have to get him. No, you don't. Like, if they take Luke McCaffrey, cool. He has a skill set that fits on this offense, great. But just because what his last name is, doesn't mean you have to take him. You don't have to take him at all. For the sake, again, of being realistic and this being the most accurate Niners mock draft ever, we're going to be Kyle Shanahan and we're going to say, get me my running back. And if the reports are true, we are going to draft Isaac Guerendo from Louisville at pick 135, end of the first round. Would I do that? No, I wouldn't. Now, all that to say, I do like Isaac Guerendo. I really do. Because on my big board, you can say, on all my notes here, Isaac Guerendo is my top running back of the middle rounds, of that second tier of running backs. I think he's stellar. I think if he's healthy, it's a big if he's healthy, he can be RB2 come year 1 or 2. He is a 4th or 5th round pick per Dane Brugler's The Beast on The Athletic. So the spot in which we took him makes sense, which makes me feel pretty good. But he can fight through contact. He lowers his pads. Excellent vision. Solid pass catcher. He's a pretty okay pass blocker. Insane speed, 4.3 speed. He's 6 foot, 221 pounds. Like, he has the makeup to be an RB2 in this offense. He had 22 explosive runs in college on just 132 carries. So 6% of his carries were explosive runs. That's really impressive. Despite the 4.3 speed, though, he kind of does take a while to get going, which, like, he's not a player you'd say was shot out of a cannon. He's fast, and once he gets going, you're not catching him, but there is, like, it does take a little bit. He doesn't have the acceleration you'd want of a player that runs 4.3. You'd want that gone. He's not that kind of player. He's not Sonic the Hedgehog. He builds up to his speed. Now, the biggest concern of him is the injuries. A lot of injuries to the lower half of his body. But if that doesn't scream Kyle Shanahan, high potential, injury history running back, that you just say, yes. Like, the past 2 running backs Kyle has drafted haven't really been scheme fits. Like, when they signed Jerick McKinnon, people said, really? At least he was a scheme fit for what they wanted to do. Whereas Trey Sermon and TDP weren't really scheme fits in what Shanahan's offense is. Isaac Guerendo is at least a scheme fit. And if he reaches the potential, like everyone's saying, he's Raheem Mostert 2.0 if he can stay healthy. We saw what Kyle made of Raheem. Now, Raheem's played 8 years. He's been paid a handful of times. I don't expect Guerendo to be Raheem year 1. Mostert year 1. That's very rare. It took Mostert 5-6 years to find himself in the league. But if Guerendo can find himself in the league, I do think Kyle can make him into gold. And I do think in round 4, pick, was it 130, whatever it was, like the Niners, I think, could really find something with him. Now you're at pick 176, though. And you're talking about, could you go tight end here? That makes a lot of sense. Eric All's on the board. And I think I'm kind of caught in between because I see 3 players that I really like. And it's a gamble to think that they're both going to be there. Now, in last week's draft, we talked about Dallin Holker, tight end from Colorado State. We talked about tackle like Christian Jones from Texas, Christian Jones from Texas, I don't think he'll be here at pick 176. And again, for the sake of realism, he may not be. Maybe we shouldn't take him. But let's at least talk about him. Dane Brugler has him in the 4th round. So maybe he falls to the 5th round. Who knows? He has good technique, good anchor, good hand placement. He needs to work on the inside counters. That can be a technique flaw in his game. But once you coach him up some more, that could go away. The issues that you have with the Christian Jones from Texas at tackle, I think are so minor that maybe he's not playing year 1, right? But like they have in the past with Nick Zakelj and Spencer Burford, although Burford did play out of need, not because they wanted him to, but like Nick Zakelj, who kind of he was a project more than anything. But in between those two players, Burford, who they liked, 5th-round pick, I believe, from UTSA, he was going to play tackle or guard. He had to pick. Jones doesn't have to pick. And I can argue Jones is more refined than Burford is coming out. But then there is your tight end, where it's like, yeah, Eric All, who you got to have a tight end. Is he going to last to pick 211? Now, we could trade back up. I don't know if that's wise. All that to say, I think taking Christian Jones makes sense. Like, taking a tackle, you'd want a top guy, for sure. You want your Jordan Morgans, you'd want your Marius Mims, your Troy Fatanos, your Kingsley Suamateas. Like, those are givens. Now, there are some questions of, are those guys guards or tackle? Sure. We got Graham Barton at pick 31.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Phenomenal pick. It just ensures your entire inside. I think it almost makes Feliciano a backup again, makes Banks a backup, or maybe a case where Brindle becomes a backup. But you need to have Graham Barton on the offensive line. We took Bo Limmer, so we already have insulated the interior of the offensive line. I would hate to go into this coming year with no tackle, at least in the conversation of, can we at least get Jalen Moore off the team? McKivitz is fine. I think everybody could say he's fine. He's a C amongst right tackles. If he starts, you don't love it, but if he's there, you're like, you're not the worst thing in the world. Then you have Trent. I think taking Christian Jones and putting him at right tackle makes a lot of sense. I know on the board still is Caden Wallace from Penn State. The Niners have had their eye on him, but I just think Christian Jones, like, I'm fighting between All and Jones. You got to have a tight end. You got to have a tackle. Which one do you value more? I think, like, I can talk myself in to taking Christian Jones over Eric All, but I don't know if All is going to be there any longer. I don't think Christian Jones should even be here on the board, which just, again, it makes the conversation tough to have because you want to be realistic. You want to pick the player that I believe, that you believe San Francisco should, but also will take in this spot. I honestly think San Francisco would take Eric All here. I think All will get picked later in the draft, which again adds more into the conversation of, should I do this? I'll take Christian Jones because that's a position of need, a better player. I think at times on the high end could be a day 2 number pick. Like, he could be a day 2 tackle if everything goes his way. And we're just going to hope and pray Eric All is still on that board at pick 211. I doubt he will be, but I do think Christian Jones, you've gotten 3 offensive linemen, you've gotten an edge rusher, you have strengthened your team a lot on the interior as Eric All goes at pick 182. Thankfully, we've done the homework. We can go get a tight end later in the draft in the 6th and 7th rounds, but I think so far we have had a really good mock draft. There are some picks you can look at and say, I don't know, but Graham Barton at pick 31, Marshawn Kneeland at pick 63, which some teams apparently have him in the first round, which we'll see if that's right or wrong. But then you have Mike Sainristil starting nickelback, potentially day 1, pushes the north to the outside. Bo Limmer, future center and guard of the team, Javon Baker, Isaac Rendo, and now Christian Jones. You have really fortified, I think, your offense. And you've not only fortified the interior, you've added weapons to the running back room, to the receiver room, and you like to get a tight end, but they also gave Eric Saubert guaranteed money, albeit small. So I don't know exactly like what's going to happen there. Preferably, if I had things my way, and this was a Burger King commercial, I would take Ben Sinnott from Kansas State. But a second round, third round tight end doesn't scream the Niners, which is frustrating, but because like mock drafts in themselves are mainly for people like you and me to sit back and say, here's who would I take. This mock draft, the last two are kind of like that, but this two, no. This is who I think the Niners should take or will take. Because this is, again, like the title says, the most accurate Niners 7th round mock draft out there. And so we're trying to make this as accurate as possible. Now, again, there are certainly conversations to have in regards to, would that guy be on the board? How could you not take Ricky Pearsall in round 3? Want to know why? I don't think he'll be there. That's why. Let's go to the defense, though. We're back on the board. Pick 211. We pick at 215. So we pick in just 4 picks. Let's see what we can do. Because Jaden Cremutty's still there. You can take him later in the draft, I believe. Gabriel Murphy from UCLA is still on the board. Interesting. They had him at 250. Did he do something to get in trouble that I don't know about? Because Gabriel Murphy from UCLA, that low? That does not feel right to me. I think I have him in my... Yeah, he's 6'2", 246 pounds, had an 87.6 pass rush grade last year, doesn't have the strength you want to push back an offensive lineman, but he's really compact. Quick feet, he can play standing up or have his hands in the dirt. He's not going to win in close quarters. He has literally, and when I say this, you're going to go, what? He has in the 0th, if that's even a term, 0 percentile in regards to arm length. Like we're talking tiniest arms, like T-Rex arms for a defensive lineman who's 6'2", 246 pounds. The one thing I do like about him, though, is he has a plan. A lot of guys do not have a plan. He has a plan when he attacks the opposing offensive line. Really good run grade, 77.1, and an 18.4 pass rush win rate. Like, his build makes no sense with the arm length he has, but he wins. Again, you're kind of looking at length and saying, I'm just not sure. I don't buy into that. See if I have anybody else here we can look at. Like Miles Cole from Texas Tech is also here on the board still. He's 6'6", 280 pounds. He has insane length. He's 6'6", but he doesn't have the play strength you'd want for a player that is 6'6", 280 pounds. He's a 6-year senior out of Texas Tech. He's someone that is a project he would need 2 to 3 years to really flourish, but he gets off the ball quickly. He will give you high effort every single play. But when you look at his stats, like there's a lot of players in this draft that are either production heavy and you go, yep, they just get it done. There's also players where they have some production, but you're projecting of what they might be in the future and you're hoping what they can become. Miles Cole is 6'6", 280 pounds, yet he only has 3.5 sacks. How at that size are you at least not overpowering smaller tackles, which you are the size of a tackle. You're 6'6", 280 pounds. You should at least be able to push them back and fight them off and get by them at times. Only 3.5 sacks? Really? He's someone that I've heard this term used. I think it was by Brett Coleman. And if it wasn't, it may have been by the NFL Stock Exchange guys. They talked about him being a one-step kind of player. And the way they described that was he completes step 1, he beats the tackle, and then is like, what do I do next? And that to me feels like he doesn't really have a plan in what he's going to do. Okay, once I beat the tackle, what is the play being run? Where's the ball at? It's like, I won. Now what's next? And he has high effort, but where are you putting the effort into? And I think 6th round pick, the height, the build, like the desire to have a player like that is there. He's a gigantic human being. I can see them wanting that, but I just I point to that and I go, are you sure? Like, that to me doesn't scream like you should be dominating offensive linemen. And if you can play inside, even better. But 6'6", 240 pounds or 280 pounds, whatever it was, like, how are you not beating opposing linemen? Like, how are you not just taking it to them over and over and over again, and you're just not doing it? And like, it's honestly like depressing, because you watch him and you're like, this guy should be just crazy good. And no, production is not there, non-existent. I do want to go back to cornerbacks, though, because the Niners, I believe it was today via Adam Schefter, were either visiting with or had a visit lined up with DeCamerion Richardson from Mississippi State. And on the board here, on their big board, pick 223, at our pick 211, he's 6'2", 188 pounds, 32 and 3/8 inch arms, which is, I think, pretty close to Jordan Morgan. Again, I think he's 4/8 of an inch off of Jordan Morgan's arm length. He runs a 4.36, so he's really fast, good size, good, willing tackler, outstanding run defender. He works better in press coverage. He can jam other receivers at the line of scrimmage. I think of like his makeup, he has 354 special team snaps. So the new kickoff rules, he is someone that would fit a need of this team where you have a lot of guys that are either veterans or just aren't special teamers. The Niners, who made it a point this offseason to sign a lot of special team players, Chase Lucas, I think it's Chase Lucas, Yadam, Ruckusin, like they made it a point to add special team talent. He could fit right into that grouping. His hips are a little tighter than you want to. Like, he cannot shadow receivers at all. But when you think about a player that isn't going to give you much, like he has 0 interceptions in his entire career, but he'll be a dog, be a good run defender, special teamer. Like, DeCamerion Richardson, I think, should be in that conversation of like, wow, like, okay, like, you're not going to start, and if you are starting, what's going on? But I think 6th round pick 211, like, you are in the conversation of like, you make a lot of sense to take here. There is a linebacker who will take later in the draft, but let's take Richardson. I think the Niners like him. I think he's Dane Brugler's like 18th cornerback off his big board, so we'll take him here. He's got the size you want. You already got an inside guy. We'll give you an outside guy who just likes to tackle, likes to get in your face, likes to be a dog. Some that can fit in San Francisco's defense, and you can go, yep, that makes sense. That's the guy they like. There is a linebacker a little later as the Rams get Gabriel Murphy, who is just the shortest armed guy I've ever seen in my life, but somehow is productive. I don't see anybody else in regards to edge rushers. You already got one. Not sure you need two. We do pick at pick 251, and we're currently at pick 215, which I think are our last 2 picks of the draft. I do see Jalen Harrell on the draft board. They have him at 357 on their big board. Let's talk about Jalen Harrell for a second, because I have him not numbered, but I have a mock-up on him, I believe, in my notes, because I don't think he'll be here. He's 6'4", 250 pounds. He plays lighter than that. he might be able to play off-ball linebacker for you, not on the edge. He had an 86 rushing defense grade last year, a 73.9 run defense grade last year, a near 19% pass rush win rate grade. He is someone that, if he wants to be a rusher, needs to play standing up. He has great speed. He can change direction. The way Michigan used him was really confusing because they didn't use him as an every down player, so he's probably not going to be that in the NFL. But for a UDFA, maybe could be in a conversation of, okay, like, can you lose a little bit of weight and play off-ball linebacker for us? He has a speed. He has the athletic makeup. He's 6'4", 250. If you're 6'4", 240, 6'4", 238, and you're more muscle, you're a little stronger, like, you can be a off-ball linebacker in the NFL. And I think you can really succeed. I also do want to talk about a one receiver for a second, because there are two players I do want to take in this draft, and one of them is a receiver. We got Javon Baker as our speedster, and I do think this next player, if we don't take him, but he could be a UDFA once it's all said and done, that's Josh Cephas from UTSA. Dane Brugler has him as a 7th round or UDFA, which makes sense to me, but he's 6'3", 185 pounds. A bigger receiver. Of his yardage last year at UTSA, 547. That's 52.1% of his yardage was off of yak. He's big. He's 6'3". He's fast. He can make the first guy miss consistently. He's really good at going from a receiver to a runner. Excellent blocker. Savvy route runner. His route tree isn't great, but the routes that he knows, pretty good. He does have a dropping problem, but in a year where Juwan Jennings is, an RFA, could be a 1-year deal if they don't extend him. I could easily see a player like Josh Cephas. Like, if I didn't tell you a name and I said, has a dropping problem, which Juwan Jennings did and has had a couple times the last couple years, but is an excellent blocker, loves to get yak. He's 6'3", makes the first guy missed, and is a good runner after the catch. If that doesn't scream Juwan Jennings, or at least a hybrid of what Juwan Jennings brings to the Niners, I mean, Josh Cephas might be the guy. Now, having two of those players in your building can be redundant, but if you want to look ahead, or as a UDFA, could certainly be in that conversation of, hey, like, this guy makes a lot of sense to have if we're not going to be able to re-sign Juwan Jennings in, at the end of the year or even during the season. But let's look at, I think we're going to look at defensive tackle. Because Jaden Cremuddy is there. We picked him last time. We don't have a defensive tackle yet. I wanted Michael Hall, but I swallowed my pride and didn't take him. For the sake of realism, although I do think San Francisco should like him a lot. Jaden Cremuddy, took him last time from Mississippi State. Jaden Cremuddy, probably going to be a 7th round pick, maybe a UDFA. You're in the 6th round. It's a good place to take him. He's 6'4", 301 pounds, quick off the line, has 33-inch arms, 10.5-inch hands. Big guy. High motor, body built for the NFL. A bit raw, but what do you expect in the 6th and 7th round? You give him Chris Kocurek, and you just say, coach him up. I think that screams Jaden Cremuddy. We'll take him here, get you a late-round corner, a late-round defensive tackle, because in 1 year's time, Khalid Davis can't stay healthy, at least hasn't shown to stay healthy so far. Kevin Givens could be gone. Malik Collins could be gone. And you give Cremuddy a year to get in the system with the defense, with Kocurek. I think you could find yourself, I don't want to say a steal, but at least a role player in a couple years, if not 1 year. Like, he's got the body. He just needs the coaching. And if there is anybody anybody in the NFL in regards to defensive line coaching that can get the best out of a raw player, it is Chris Kocurek. Truly is Chris Kocurek. We don't pick until 251. We can go like Josh Cephas went to the Buccaneers. That's a great fit for them. I like what we've done so far, and I do like the fact is in 3 separate mock drafts, there's been some carryover, but the first mock draft was pick 31, get a tackle, Jordan Morgan. Second mock draft was, we're swinging big, we're going to trade up and get a Marius Mims from Georgia. This mock draft was, sit back and get Graham Barton, who shouldn't be there come pick 31, but he was there, and I wasn't going to let him pass because someone's got to take him, and if he's there, they should take him. But what we've done the past 3 mock drafts, 3 weeks, we are 10 days away, I believe, from the NFL first round. Like, it's coming up really, really quick. This is mock draft 3.0. Mock draft 4.0 out next week, so come back right here. Hence why you should like, share, and subscribe. We can dive into even more prospects in 1 week time, but each mock draft has had similar picks, but they've also had a conversation of, we did XYZ last time, we're going to do, let's say, Jaden Cromartie last week. Like the past 2 drafts, we've gone Javon Solomon and Mo Kamara. We just went Marshawn Nealon round 2, bang. We have the one edge rusher they like a lot. Hence why this is the most accurate Niners mock draft out there. So we have the edge, we have 2 cornerbacks, we have a defensive tackle. Not that we're looking at, like, we are taking the best player available on the board, but got running backs, got a receiver. If there is one position that I do think the Niners need to address, and we didn't do it here because of draft positioning, that is kick returner. They don't have one yet. And that is scary. And you can always sign somebody once they get into, training camp and OTAs. Guys will get cut. Guys will get signed. This, that, and the other. Like, I'm not worried about, they're not going to have someone, they're going to get screwed. Not that, but it's okay, like, there's a clear need there. I'd rather Debo and McCaffrey and Ayuk not be back doing kicks and punts. I would love it if it was Ronnie Bell, if it was Isaac Grendo, like, having a playmaker back there that isn't your number one, your top starter guys would be great. Which I do think could lead to many people, not just because he's a receiver, but simply because of who he is, could lead to many people drafting Malachi Corley. Because you put him back there, say it's late first, second, third round, whatever it is for him, like, you put him back there on kick returns, good luck bringing him down. Good luck bringing him down. But this moment will be pick 251. We're back on the board, our last pick of the draft. It'll be the who in the world is that pick? And I'm hoping he's still on the board here. He is. I see him. He was visiting San Francisco today. And when I saw it, I myself, like I'm sure you will, said, who is that guy? Who's that Pokemon, right? It was exactly my thoughts. I was like, man, like, this random dude they're bringing in to talk to. His name is Tatum Bethune. I hope that's right. I want to say it correctly. Tatum Bethune. He's 6 foot, 230 pounds. When I think about Tatum Bethune, or I'll rephrase that. When I think about what the Niners look for in a linebacker, they picked 2 last year, D. Winters and Jalen Graham, both who I do think, whether this year or next year, could be on the field. Like, D. Winters has the ability to become the Dre Greenlaw replacement. Is it likely at this time? No. Is it in there somewhere? Yes, it is. Jalen Graham could be a really good run-stopping, goal line linebacker. I would say he could be that now if he needed to be. But what San Francisco likes in their linebackers, and I believe Johnny Holland, linebacker coach, has said this in some way. Maybe it's not verbatim, but some way said, if you can cover, we want you. We can work with you. And oh boy, Tatum Bethune, who may not get drafted at all, could be a UDFA. This man can cover. He's 6 foot, 230 pounds. When I say he's good in coverage, I mean 1 interception, 1 pass breakup, but a 38 passer rating allowed last year for Florida State. He is 4.6'9" speed, basically 4.7 speed. He can chase down receivers. He can chase down tight ends. He's someone that, the way Florida State used him, he was a coverage linebacker at times. They'd also make him a pass rusher too. He's not a pass rusher. He's a full-on coverage linebacker that will never have to pass rush ever again. Again, a 38 passer rating allowed at Florida State last year. He has the ability to guard with misdirection. He can come down the hill quickly against the run. He's phenomenal in zone coverage. He has the fluidity to play man coverage as well. He can play Mike linebacker, but did play Will linebacker at FSU. But again, his usage was kind of weird, being a pass rusher at times and also playing Will. It just was confusing as to what they're doing with him. But when I talk about someone like Mike Sainristil, cornerback who we picked from Michigan, loves to just knock guys' heads off. Tatum Bethune is the same way. He wants to physically send a message to the opposing offense of like, you're not coming to me. If you do, night-night. Steph Curry, night-night. Call it a game. Like, sound the alarm. If you come my way, I will make sure your helmet's on the ground and your cleats are flying in the air. He's a thumper. He's a forceful tackler. He's a strong and he's a good tackler. Like, a lot of times with hard-hitting linebackers, they hit hard, not good tacklers. Tatum Bethune, really good tackler. Again, could be a UDFA for the sake of getting him in the building. Like a couple weeks ago in our first mock draft, we took Devin Leary, a quarterback, just to get a guy in the building. If you like him enough, in a couple of years' time, you can get him in the building. There's plenty of other guys like that on the draft board still, I believe. Like Quantez Stiggers is still there. There's no way, and if he is, I don't think he will be, but if he's there at pick 251, Quantez Stiggers in the CFL should not be on the board in the 7th round. He's not going to be there. And if he is there, somebody messed up somewhere. He's too good to not be taken earlier. We didn't go safety for a good reason. There's not a lot of safeties there that we liked where we picked. But I'll tell you what, if there's a player at pick 251 that, you know, there isn't really a lot of stars late in the draft, but there's one guy amongst many, but one guy I think San Francisco has their eye on because they visited with him today of all people and of all days on Mock Draft Monday number 3. It's Tatum Bethune. So let's draft him at pick 251. They have him at 321. They have him as a UDFA. That could happen. But let's get Tatum Bethune in the red and gold, have him be part of this linebacker room, and let's see where it takes us. So look, we did every single pick, 7 rounds, once again, broke down every single pick. That will happen again next Monday. Want you to stick around, like, share, and subscribe to the show. If you liked what you've seen, you need to like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned because guess what? More draft content's coming out. I can't wait to dive into the actual NFL draft. And again, you watch back, you look back, you listen back to the show and say, they didn't pick Ricky Pearsall at pick 94? Yes, because he shouldn't be there at pick 94. And the reason we didn't take certain guys because if they are there, and I think they're not going to be there, I'm not going to take them for the sake of realism. I don't want to fool people. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll take the L. I have a hard time believing Ricky Pearsall is going to be there at 94 of all picks. But here's our mock draft number 3. We have at overall 31, Graham Barton from Duke, the interior offensive lineman. Pick 63, Marshawn Nealand, edge rusher, Western Michigan. Pick 94, cornerback Mike Sainristil. Pick 124, Bo Limmer, center and guard from Arkansas. At pick 132, Javon Baker, UCF. Got that burner. Picked him every single mock draft. I think he just fits what the Niners want to do. At pick 135, maybe it's a reach, maybe it's not. If he stays healthy, Isaac Guerendo, running back, Louisville. At 176, I needed to get a tackle in that room to at least save us from Jalen Moore being the backup left tackle again behind Trent Williams. I don't want to see it. Christian Jones, tackle, Texas at 176. Pick 211, a guy the Niners had their eye on, DeCamerion Richardson, cornerback, Mississippi State, an instant special teams player that could in 2-3 years' time, because he's a great tackler, maybe be a depth piece for you. And again, 2 or 3 years' time. Late rounds, pick 215, Jaden Cremuddy, NFL-ready body, super raw. Give him Chris Kosarek. He should be able to excel with the body that he has, but time will tell. Then Tatum Bethune, maybe it's a reach. Give me a great coverage linebacker behind Fred, behind Dre Greenlaw, behind Devondre Campbell, and maybe he outseats Winters and Graham and Demetrius Flanagan Falls, but you have to be able to find the diamonds in the rough. Tatum Bethune, I didn't know who he was prior to today. They visited with him. I said, whoa, I understand why they like themselves some Tatum Bethune. But look, take the mock draft, take a mental picture, screenshot it. What do you think of this mock draft? Tell me down below in the comments, whether it's on Twitter or on Facebook or on YouTube, wherever you might be. Look at the mock draft. Tell me what you think down below. Who do we miss on? Who do we hit on? Which pick don't you like? Which pick do you like? What would you have done at the picks we were at? And look, Mock Draft 3.0 is now done. It's complete. Mock Draft 4.0 comes out next Monday, because next Thursday is round number 1 of the NFL Draft. And I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say this, but I will. On night 1 of the NFL Draft, I will be live on 95.7 The Game, breaking down every single pick leading up to pick 31 of the San Francisco 49ers, breaking that pick down and discussing their draft strategy as a whole. Next Thursday from 6 to 10 p.m. live on 95.7 The Game on the radio, the Odyssey app, and on YouTube. And once all that's done, we will come right back here for the draft and break down the picks afterwards as well. So next Monday, 1 week from today, Mock Draft 4.0, the final mock draft of the mock draft season. Next Thursday, live, 95.7 The Game. Then following the draft, an entire breakdown of what the San Francisco 49ers have done in the 2024 NFL Draft. I want to ask you one more time kindly to like, share, subscribe, leave that review. Follow us on Instagram, 49ers.access. X or Twitter is 49ers_access. And if you want to go to any sporting event, baseball, the NBA playoffs are about to begin tomorrow. Warriors and Kings in Sacramento. You want to go see that game live for a somewhat cheaper price than what it might be. Use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. And as always, Ayuk's not getting traded. And as always, stay faithful.